Thank you, sir. We will now move ahead for the technical session 2. It's an honor to have with us an eminent personality in the form of CA Bharat Rao to chair the second technical session. To introduce the chairman of the session, CA Bharat Rao is a BCom graduate, a chartered accountant, a certified information system auditor, certified fraud examiner, ISO 27001 ISMS lead auditor, certified ethical hacker and computer hacking and forensic investigator. He's currently working as the manager with Big Four out of Bangalore. He has been working in the field of risk management, internal control advisory, and assurance since 2013. He provides training in GRC, digital forensics, and has provided many presentations and contributed articles on IFC compliance, information security, international taxation areas, and many more. He has provided seminars on topics such as concurrent audit in CBS environment, new auditing responsibilities under Section 143 of the Companies Act, the IS audit and internal controls, and many more. He has also contributed to the guidance note established and published by ISACA in 2014, Guidance to Validate Internal Control Assertions in Indian Financial Reporting. He has worked on forensic engagements with the banking and steel sectors and also conducted functional consulting engagements for the design of new business rules and review of existing business rules configured in SAP GRC PC automated monitoring and manual test of effectiveness module. I accord a cordial welcome to you, sir. We are also pleased to introduce our efficient speakers of the session, Ms. Kashish Advani and Mr. Shimon John. To talk about the topics of today, the coronavirus pandemic had forced the businesses to operate remotely and embrace digital technologies, whether they are ready or not. While the audit process was already evolving with the emergence of new technology and growing investor expectations, COVID-19 has significantly accelerated the evolution towards a virtual audit. To throw light on this area, we have Ms. Kashish Advani, who is a CA final student who is pursuing her articleship at Deloitte Huskins and Sells, Ahmedabad. She was the Master of Ceremony for the International CA Student Conference 2021. She has also participated in SOF International Company Secretary Olympiad competition held in January 2018. She has excelled in EduHeal Foundation's Interactive Olympiad 2017, in 5th Business and International Finance Olympiad with international rank 60. She has also secured 461th rank and 91.7 percentile in the 9th International Commerce Olympiad held on 28 November 2017. We are immensely pleased to have such an efficient speaker with us. A warm welcome to you, Ms. Kashish. Talking about the second topic for the session, past few months have posed new challenges for many audit firms as they were compelled to work remotely from home. Even while working from home, the auditors must comply with the audit standards as well as maintain creativity and healthy skepticism. I now call upon the speaker of the session, the second speaker of the session, who is Mr. Shimon John, who will be providing us more information on these challenges and the ways to overcome the same. Shimon John is a CA Inter student who is pursuing his articleship at Roshan Thomas & Co. He has completed his CA Inter Group 1 with exemption in all 4 subjects in November 2020 attempt. He has completed his BCom from Sacred Heart College, Ernakulam. A warm welcome to you, Shimon. I now request the first speaker of the session of Ms. Kashish Advani to take over. Ms. Kashish Advani, please take over the first session.
Hi everyone, this is Bharat here. Sorry Kashish, just to cut you in here. Just to set the context, everyone, that technology is evolving as explained by the MC. right? And basically the important thing that we need to know as future chartered accountants is that the ability to adapt to the change. And over the past few years, and especially during the pandemic time, we are now seeing that technology is driving the businesses. Otherwise, business used to govern the technologies, but now new and new technologies are being invented as such, right? And these technologies are being embraced by the business folks and are now being used as a way of life. We as chartered accountants or future chartered accountants need to have that responsibility of understanding these new nuances, the new technologies, the new buzzwords, and understand how it really works. So I think right now we've got Kashish speaking on the path ahead of audit in the digital era, right? Digital is in, so there's no more green tick marks anymore. The green pens will be, stored in some museum maybe 10, 20 years down the line. But nevertheless, let's be ready to embrace this new technology and be more agile and be more welcoming and enjoy the profession. Over to you, Kashish.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for setting the base for the session. And now I think I'll be able to carry on in a better and efficient manner. So I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know if it's visible or not. One second. Yes.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So starting with today's session, audit forms the cream of our profession. And with an increase in technology and digitization, getting a confidence on numbers and the controls on financial reporting processes is becoming difficult by each passing day. Further, as Vasant Kamath sir rightly mentioned, that conventional methods are actually fading away. On the same lines, even in the startups, there are a lot of software applications which are being used. Now, if these applications are constantly being used, then it is very, very clear that they will also have an impact on the financial reporting that is actually happening in the organization. And some material account balances and transactions will also be governed by these software applications, which actually are IT driven and automated to a very huge extent. As CA Jayacharya sir also mentioned that today chartered accountants are also facing the problem of big data, where the volume of data and the complexity is extremely high, wherein it becomes difficult for us to actually judge the data on the basis of a few hand-picked samples, which we actually try to test. So for that also, analytics has to be used. Further, as Mr. Saveen Hegde mentioned, that we need to be skilled to last or skilled to adapt. So in the current environment, we actually need to be skilled to adapt, and the green tick marks have really have gone away and should go away in the near future. So rapid changes in technology are a reality of life. Not only private companies, but also government are moving towards digitization, wherein faceless appeals are being carried on, or the IT applications for revenue collection, both by the union and the state governments, etc., is being carried on. In the changing scenario, the auditor has to adapt himself to the changes in the business environment of the audit universe to be able to provide assurance to the stakeholders as per the mandate of the Supreme Audit Institution. This would actually require moving towards auditing in digital environment, involving data analytics, digitizing audit processes, examining reliability of digitized data sets, etc. As the purpose of audit function has not changed, the focus of audit continues to be on accountability, transparency, and probity, thereby making the human element in the audit process most critical in today's times. Now, I have tried to cover the whole IT-enabled audit in 3 phases. The first one being IT audit. The second digital audit, and the third one being IT support to audit. Now, what do I mean when I say IT audit? It actually entails involving IT specialists in the audit that we are actually conducting or going to conduct. Digitization, when there is digitization in the company on a huge level, it is very difficult for auditors per se to carry out audit individually and without the integration of IT specialists, and to actually devise IT controls or to actually identify the risks which are arising from IT prominently. So involving IT specialists is a must. Further, when it comes to digital audit is when the engagement team uses audit tools online to overcome the problem of big data. Now, these tools actually involve pivot or sampling through computerized methods or aging recalculations and threshold calculations, wherein we determine the materiality of the entity based on proper methods that we need to use. The next one is IT support to audit. Now, this is the point where we actually make a sharing of data between client and the engagement team particularly easy, so that both the parties have access to data, they have easy access to data, and they also have confidentiality that is maintained. So a common route through which that data can be shared is also to be covered in this perspective. Because now, as audit is from, as we are working from home, audit has also seen these aspects where scanned documents are also provided. So there needs to be a proper channel through which through which we can access these documents. So what is the first step? The first step is discussion with the IT specialist. For example, I am working on an entity wherein I'm auditing a client wherein it is a huge client. Plus, it has a lot of data and a lot of it is digitized. So what I have to do is I have to engage with my IT specialist in my firm, and I need to discuss the extent of involvement of that IT specialist and the nature of audit and involvement of that IT specialist. If it is a very complex audit, if the with a lot of data involved, then the IT specialist will also be involved in designing and implementation of the IT controls that we set. Plus, the IT specialist will be involved in assessing the risks which are actually arising from the IT controls in that organization. The next step that I have tried to explain here is through this process flow diagram. First, we need to understand how IT affects the flows of transaction in any organization that we are going to audit. We need to identify the relevant applications, data warehouses, report writers, and other technological applications. For example, an entity is using SAP. Pharmaceutical companies also use softwares like PharmaSuite and Interact, which actually traces their purchase inward transactions, and then they also use Tally to record data. So when there are a lot of modules in a system, then how these modules are being integrated to process the data and to pass journal entries? Is everything automated, or manual reconciliations are also there in place? All these things we need to check, and we also need to understand how IT environment is placed in the organization. Are there relevant applications, data warehouses, or report writers? If there are we taking a control reliance approach? If we are taking a control reliance approach, then we need to identify and assess the classification of risks arising from IT, and we also need to understand, identify, evaluate, design, and determine the implementation. And we also need to test the operating effectiveness of the relevant GITCs. The next one is integration with auditors. In order to execute a quality audit, it is important that IT specialists and core auditors are integrated through the life cycle of the audit. This includes determining the nature and extent of IT specialist involvement in areas of the audit beyond GITCs, such as tests of automated controls and segregation of duties. So first we'll focus on the process flow for conducting our audit and for the entities. We first need to understand the process flow for understanding and testing the GITCs. The second step is how IT affects the flows of transactions and identifying relevant technological elements. Understand the role of IT in the entity's flow of transactions and including a high level of understanding of the IT environment. The next step is to assess the risks which are arising from IT, understanding, identifying, and testing relevant GITCs and identifying relevant GITCs, and the key activities for concluding on RAITs and determining our audit. The last one is to check the severity of the control deficiencies which arise because of the deviations from the control which actually take place in the organization. Understanding how it affects IT affects the flows of transactions. First, we need to actually understand that how the transactional data is transferred to the general ledger and reported in the financial statements, passing through the automated and manual interfaces. The second step is significant changes within the IT environment. For example, are there system upgrades which are actually taking place? And when those system upgrades are taking place, is there any change of responsibility or roles, or is there change of data because of that system upgrade? And are these controls properly set in the organization so as to avoid any data discrepancies and to make sure that the data that is actually being tested upon, or the information produced by the entity or information used by the company is actually worth relying upon and is accurate and complete at the same time. And the third one is IT environment composition. For example, does the organization use SAP, or does it use Tally, or does it use a combination of Tally or other softwares like I mentioned, Interact and Pharmasoft? And further, significant accounts and disclosures, relevant applications. These significant accounts and disclosures have to be checked through relevant applications. What are the relevant applications that are based in the organization, and the relevant infrastructure that is based in the organization, and the risks arising from IT. Now, this has an indirect relationship with the general IT controls which are set by an organization, and risk arising from IT has a direct relationship with those indirect controls. Even if the risks arising from IT are not that significant, but if there are material account balances and disclosures, we always need to perform a walkthrough as to how the process is actually being carried out and implemented by the entity, and what are the general IT controls that are actually followed by the entity in that process. Okay, so the next step is identify relevant applications, data warehouses, report writers, and other technological elements. The determination as to which application systems, data warehouses, and report writers are relevant to our audit that require GITCs to address their integrity and reliability is based on the consideration of the relevance of the following factors. The four factors are data, automated controls, system-generated reports, and substantive procedures that alone cannot provide sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. These are for organizations which actually have extremely complex IT systems which are developed. There are also some instances where these need not be checked. For example, in less complex organizations which are using low-end software or a system to maintain financial information, for which it is not possible to design and implement GITCs to support the integrity of the financial information maintained in the software. If so, the entity is likely implementing business controls to process and maintain accounting records versus relying on the software or system. There might be some manual intervention or some manual reconciliation which is involved so that the process is not completely automated. Or is the entity a startup entity that only has capital and expenditure transactions, limited transaction types, and are these transactions not dependent on the system? We need to assess the situation that is present, and if so, then the transactions and support for the transactions are not dependent on the system, and the GITCs in that case are not relevant. Now, for understanding the relevant applications data warehouses, we need to understand these 4 factors. The first one being data. The entity relies on the application system or data warehouse to process or maintain the data. Related to material classes of transactions, account balances, and disclosures. And second, reports which are used in the operation of relevant controls. The more complex and voluminous the transactions and or other data are, the more likely their integrity and reliability will depend on the effectiveness of the general IT controls, as it is less likely that sufficiently precise controls that are not dependent on the data or the application systems will be in place to address the risks of material misstatement for the material classes of transactions, account balances, and disclosures. So for this, I have 2 sets of examples. For example, that GITC would be relevant to the audit. We consider that an entity has a billing system. That billing system performs the function of generating invoices based on the sales order, and there are about 200 invoices which are generated every day. And moreover, it also keeps a track of say trade receivables and collections, which is subsequently happening in the organization. Further, it processes and houses data. That is, it also has entity specific details. So for example, if I have made sales to XYZ company, it will also have details of XYZ company, and there is huge level of integration involved wherein I transfer data from one module to other, and it is completely automated. In this case, due to the volume of data supporting the entries posted to the general ledger system and the complexity which is involved because of multiple inputs being considered, it is not practical for the entity to design precise controls that are independent of the billing system to validate the revenue and receivable entries which are generated by the billing system and recorded in the general ledger system. As a result, the entity likely relies on automated controls within the billing system and the related infrastructure that may be relevant to our audit. If so, the billing system and related IT infrastructure introduce RAITs that affect the integrity and reliability of the data, and as such, the system and related IT infrastructure are relevant to our audit. In this case, the relevant controls over the data are automated controls, and there is no manual intervention. Thus, GITCs would be relevant to the audit. Now, there is a second case wherein we consider that the GITCs are actually would not be relevant to the audit because there is manual intervention. Understanding of those GITCs would not be that relevant. For example, a manufacturer uses several application systems to record the sales transactions. For this, first they execute the sales order. There are monthly around 200 sales orders, and they are entered into the order entry system from a hard copy of the sales order that the salesperson receives. Management has an input-output control which the sales order processed are reconciled back to the hard copy originally entered into the system. For example, on a monthly basis, if those 200 sales order are actually input in the system, at the end of the month, there is one person who is actually responsible for reconciling whether the sales order details match with the sales order totals and the sales order details which are actually input in the sales order system. Then these sales order details are migrated to the revenue management system, including certain information that originated in the order entry system. The invoices are actually generated from the revenue management system, which is also detailed on the sales order received directly from the customer. Now, in this case, it may be appropriate to conclude that the order entry system and the related IT infrastructure are not relevant to our audit, as the volume and complexity of the sales order and related revenue transactions are low, and management has a precise input-output control, verifying the completeness and accuracy of the sales orders processed. In other words, the RAITs, which are actually related to the integrity and accuracy of the data in the order entry system and the GITCs in place to address these risks are not relevant to our audit, as management is not relying upon the GITCs. Rather, they are relying upon the input-output control which is there in place. As such, there is no need for us to understand the GITCs related to the order entry system in order to plan substantive procedures. The next step is substantive procedures alone cannot provide sufficient appropriate audit evidence, where an entity conducts its business using its application system to initiate orders for the purchase and delivery of goods based on predetermined rules of what to order and in what quantities. Now, if an application system as a whole is actually deciding all the things and from the start to end, it is from the start to end. Now the end stops at recording the journal entries. Till the journal entries are recorded, application system guides the whole process. No other documentation of orders placed or goods received is produced or maintained other than through the application system. In this example, given that there is no further documentation, the automated three-way match of the order, the goods receiver, and the invoice is a relevant automated control. Therefore, the application system is actually relevant to our audit. Now, identifying relevant elements of the IT infrastructure. Now, for example, when I gave an example of PharmaSuite, Tally, and SAP. Now, just imagine that there is a situation wherein there is a pharmaceutical company. It uses PharmaSuite, for example, in its manufacturing unit in Solon. Now, PharmaSuite is a software that actually records all the purchase inward transactions that are happening. These transactions are actually entered in Tally, and this year they are going to migrate from Tally to SAP. Now, three components are involved. When this migration from Tally to SAP takes place, the entity has to make sure that relevant controls are in place to make sure that this year's closing balances, which become next year's opening balances, are properly recorded in SAP, and all the details are properly transferred to SAP. Further, the reconciliations from the report which is generated from PharmaSuite for the purchase inwards has to be made with Tally. In such cases where there is a lot of manual intervention involved, where manual reconciliations take place, the entity is not completely dependent on the automated controls, and thus GITCs become less relevant. Identify and assess the risks which are arising from IT. The common examples of the risks to an entity's internal control resulting from IT include reliance on systems or programs that are inaccurately processing data, processing inaccurate data, or both. Then there is unauthorized access to data that might result in destruction of data or improper changes to data. The possibility of IT personnel gaining some access privileges beyond those which are necessary, unauthorized changes to data in master files, and the like. So how does the risks associated from IT, that is RAIT risk assessment, actually take place? It takes place in two phases. High-level RAIT risk assessment and detailed RAIT risk assessment. When I talk about high-level RAIT risk assessment, I mean that we need to understand the IT infrastructure of the company as a whole, how the IT affects the entity's flows of transactions, including obtaining a high-level understanding of the IT environment. This assessment assists in identification of the application systems, data warehouses, and report writers that are actually present in the organization. However, not all the IT systems that are in the organization are relevant for our financial reporting process. So for this, we actually carry forward a more detailed RAIT risk assessment process, wherein we identify those RAITs and assess and understand and identify the relevant GITCs related to those RAITs, which are actually necessary or important for our financial reporting process. So for this is a basically this is a summary for how the RAIT actually takes place, and in this, basically assessing the risks which are arising from IT, we need to take all the IT control considerations which are there in the organization. Now, how do we identify that the RAIT has a that it is a lower RAIT or a higher RAIT? And when this identification is done, we need to test controls which based on risk associated with the controls. So for example, there is an application system that an entity uses, which actually generates which actually goes through a three-way match. It generates invoices based on the sales order and the shipping details, which are actually within the threshold of the entity's devised principles. For example, if it says that the maximum credit period which can be offered is 30 days. So if the sales order which is generated is of 30 days, then only then an invoice will be created. So in this application system, are the controls there in place? And do people and how do people have authorization to actually change the data? So one risk could be that people have unauthorized access to this system, wherein they can change the details of sales order and shipping documents, and thus invoices which are created are not accurate and complete. So for this, there are some unique RAIT considerations. Now, I have taken it on two bases. The first one being relevance to financial reporting considerations, and the second one being technology platform considerations. Now, an example for this is, for example, source data. If it is a very complex data and it involves huge amounts of data, and it is directly relevant to the material and significant account balances and disclosures that we have identified for an entity, then it may indicate a higher RAIT, versus when it does not indicate towards a very it indicates more towards the other income side of an entity, and it is extremely low volume of data, and it is a very simple data, wherein suppose an entity is actually accepting subscriptions from its customers for the services, extra services that they are actually providing. So it may indicate a lower RAIT that falls in place. Now, understand, identify, and test the relevant GITCs. Now, this is more or less the process of how we actually test the controls, testing the design effectiveness of controls, and testing the operating effectiveness, and performing roll forward procedures. So, for this one, I have considered some unique considerations. For example, end user system access. Now, end users are those people who are separate from the IT people who are in the organization that we are auditing. So so we have to determine, for example, privilege access. So we have to determine that who has access to what kind of data. For example, if a client is using SAP, now there are 5 modules, and there are 80 people who are using those 5 modules. And there is also finance and control module in that system. So so what we can actually do is we can actually prepare memos with questions, wherein I ask my client questions like, how many people actually have access to the finance and control module from the overall SAP module. So out of 80, only 6 people have access to the finance and control module. And how can they make changes in the finance and control module? How authorization processes are being carried out? And does the IT function, do the IT people actually perform more functions that they are actually entitled to perform? Once they make changes in the systems, are they also allowed to make changes in the data that actually exists in the system? For example, if there is an update and some data needs to be changed because of that, does the IT personnel perform only the update, or the IT personnel also changes the data? All these things govern the control procedures which are there in the system. Now, these are some basic tools. These are some, this is information for some tools which are used. For example, the code migration tool. The code migration tool is used to migrate changes to production. Now, IT tools may be defined as the systems used to support the key GITC processes for automated approvals, generation of reports, maintaining related documentation, and other designated purposes. So, for example, there is a code migration tool, and the code migration tool is used to migrate changes into production. There is an automated configuration which is built into the system, that once someone from the production approver group approves the change is moved into production. Now, for this, we actually need to, there is a risk that there is unauthorized access. So how to overcome that risk? What is the most typical general IT control? The authentication to the system requires an ID and a password, and password standards are in line with the controls. So tool examples for this is Endeavor and CA Harvest. So these are some tools which are there, and controls around these tools is extremely necessary to perform a relevant audit. So now the final steps are concluding on the RAITs and determining the audit response. For this, we need to determine whether GITC deficiency exists, and we need to conclude on the IT risks. For determining whether a deviation exists, we actually need to see the circumstances of those deviations and the rate of those deviations. For example, if there is a change in responsibilities, but the system has not updated their change in responsibilities, there is a change in responsibilities due to promotion, and the system has not updated that change, and the person who has recently been promoted has new authorization and new roles, and so he is making changes in the system, and we come across those changes. Now, these are the circumstances where he is allowed to make those changes, but somehow his designation has not been updated in the system. This would actually not create a deviation if we are able to check that the data which was actually entered into the system is as per the business norms, and is it correct. Further, now we have to actually determine the nature. If a deviation exists, if a GITC deviation exists, we need to determine the nature and cause of deviations and follow the steps which are guided in this flow chart according to the circumstances that exists. If a person has unauthorized access to the system, but as I said, if we are able to perform a test on the 100% population, then it might not create a problem. For example, now we actually need to check the severity of the GITC deficiencies. If they are there in the organization, we need to check their severity. For example, implementation of a consolidation software. An entity implements a consolidation software. So the data is shifted from general ledger to business warehouse and to consolidation software. Now the entity did not implement the controls in the risk assessment stage, and they did not implement sufficiently precise direct controls to reconcile data between the general ledger and the consolidation software. Now it has a pervasive impact on financial statements, and there is a deficiency in internal controls which is identified. Now in the telecommunications industry, this is another example that the entity uses an ERP system for processing the majority of its financial transactions. And there are numerous deficiencies which are related to access issues, and there are a lot of deficiencies, and even if a personnel of that entity, somebody from the management comes to us and tells us that he has knowledge of the particular facts and circumstances, we would not be able to conclude that they have reasonable assurance that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with the financial reporting process, and it actually defines that there is a deficiency or a material weakness or significant deficiency, and we need to actually communicate this to those charged with governance. Now, the problem of big data. There is a lot of data which is actually present today, and complexity level of that data is also increasing by each passing day. A huge volume of data makes it difficult for us to analyze the data on a whole on the conventional methods or the traditional methods that many of us follow. So what we need to do is we actually need to get more computerized, as the data in itself is getting more computerized. We can use pivot tables, data for data analytics. We can also use softwares like the Microsoft softwares like Power BI. So I have actually presented what we actually did for a of our client, one of our clients. So trade receivable agings, and this is the trade receivable agings and analysis. We actually obtained an aging report from our client, and what we did was we filled up that data with the help of IT. We filled up that data into the Power BI software, and we tried to analyze it. So these are the this, for example, this diagram actually shows the composition of the aging percentage in total. Now I can analyze that that what is the aging, that what is the percentage of aging, and compared to last year, how has aging performed this year, and who are the new customers which have been added to the aging report. And for example, companies like pharmaceutical companies, they have super distributors. So they have a defined number of super distributors which actually do not change that much, apart from the institutes or the government organizations to whom they supply their medicines. So we also actually did a customer analysis, like these are actually the super distributors that they have numbered, and the top 10 accounts receivable as of 31/3/2019, and top 10 accounts receivable as on 31/3/2020. So this actually also helps. There are a lot of softwares in the market, and also CA institutes are actually promoting, the chartered accountant fraternity is actually promoting analytics, and they are giving these softwares free of cost or at a very minimal cost in packages to the CAs who are actually practicing. So this is actually the path which is ahead of us, and we need to change according to the changing environment and changing times. So the key messages here are that auditors actually need to adapt to the change in business models. Among the available technologies, data analytics is currently the most mature and currently the most mature and is currently used by most firms. The audit profession is still a very early stage with AI and has not embedded it as deeply as it actually could. The human relationship between client and auditor remains important. Not everything can be replaced by technology, and that is a fact. If I do not interact with my client based on technology, and if I just accept reports and computerized documents, then that will also not work as an auditor. Auditors will need to be more adaptable to change in future. Data analytics seems to be the most mature of the advances in technology and is currently used in audit practice, particularly in journal entry testing as well. So in these dynamic times, the most important thing is to adapt and remember that where there is a will, there is a way. A lot of technological changes are happening around, but if we surround ourselves with more useful means to actually check the data and analyze the data rather than approaching for the traditional methods, then it will create a very good path ahead for audit in digital era. Thank you so much.
Very nicely done, Kashish. Congratulations on this wonderful presentation. My request is, if you can upload your presentation in on SlideShare or on LinkedIn and have it shared, I'm pretty sure the students all over India can also, take benefit out of it. Forget India, all over the world, right? All right. A couple of points that I would want to, kind of talk about since all of us are here. So what Kashish has basically done is she's kind of explained the, the need for getting into IT audits and why is it more important, and more importantly, the approaches. That's the control reliance approach, understanding the ITGCs or the GITCs, the risk associated to the IT aspects, so on and so forth. What she means to tell, to make it really, really simple is, most of you are inter students, some of you are final students, but if you look at the new CA course, intermediate section, right, the intermediate study materials, right, we have got a study material on EIS, Enterprise Information System. And if you look at one, I think it's in the first chapter or the second chapter, I can't recollect right now. Over there, there is a concept called as an information system, which consists of 4 components. This information system consists of 4 things: people, process, hardware, and software. it's as simple as that. And wherever you've got hardware and software, think that you have a computer in place. Now take this information system concept and apply it, amplify it all across your business. And the business is driven by these technologies, right? And so many of the business operations, so many of the reconciliations, decision making, and everything are dependent on these systems. So if management of the companies are dependent on these systems, why shouldn't, what is stopping the auditor from auditing these information systems? That is why I've got these new terminologies like, controls reliance testing approach, so on and so forth. In fact, if you want to know more about this approach, I would request everyone to download the guidance note on implementing IFCs. It is available on the ICAI's website. It's about 283 pages or document, brilliant document. It is something that I would insist everyone to go through. You can read this guidance note along with your standards of audit, such as SA 315, SA 330, SA 520, analytical review procedures, sampling, so on and so forth, right? Now, one more thing that I also wanted to highlight is it is very clear that business is now dependent on technology. Technology is controlling the business. If I need to create, if I've got a very new creative idea in making my a new set of business, we just tell the software engineer, I need a new custom software like this, which will cater my customers' needs, so on and so forth. So businesses are getting smarter. That means even the audits need to get smarter. That also further means, by extension, chartered accountants also need to be smarter. And you guys are the foundation, and you guys need to take it up. So a couple of skill sets that which chartered accountants or future chartered accountants should have is, you guys need not shy away from technology. Don't get, scared by these fancy terms that is being used. It's really simple at the end of the day. We are talking about e-commerce systems, telecommunication systems. In the end, it's a software running on a computer, and a computer has four things: hardware, hard disk, RAM, processor, and operating system. Without these four components, nothing works, right? Be comfortable with technology. Ensure that you retain your professional skepticism, because a lot of clients, a lot of cases, you'll find that the clients give some weird response and we end up getting confused over it. And that prevents us from asking additional questions, right? So be and don't fall into that trap. It's okay to ask these questions. You are chartered accountants. You have a right to ask these questions. So don't feel afraid to ask them. Make sure you have a good process and a control understanding knowledge. And most importantly, because IT is involved, along with your business risks, understand how IT risks are also being used within the organization. To what extent it is present, because IT risks and business risks are now going hand in hand, right? So what are a couple of things that you can do? Start being inquisitive, play around with your apps. For example, what happens if your PhonePe account or your Instagram account gets compromised, right? And like all hell breaks loose, right? That's an IT risk for you. Similarly, what are the things that can go wrong in organizations, and to what extent all hell can break loose over there? Try to be inquisitive and try to figure out how these applications work, how the Ola Cab apps work, or how the Flipkart or Amazon or whatever app that you're using, right? Like, for example, in today's event, this is being, the session is being conducted on Zoom. It is being live. It is being live casted on YouTube. And I believe there is another place where all the other students have gathered, which Gautam was just mentioning some time back, where about 750 participants are there. Like, technologies are talking with each other, right? So you need to have that inquisitive mind. Try to make it as simple as possible and try to relate how these technologies talk to one another. And I would also want to highlight one very important point, which Kashish just mentioned, that is on analytics. Analytics is the next way of auditing, in my opinion. It's all going to be data-driven audits, analytics-driven audits, and these, in order for you to rely or trust on the data, you need to ensure that the surrounding IT general controls and the other business controls on the applications are also effective, right? So analytics is another area. And if you guys are interested, you can just Google like Power BI, how to use Power BI, how to use ACL or IDEA application. And, you can play around. there are so many applications which Microsoft or Google has made it free, and all you guys have to do is just sign up and play around with it, and just like try to see what extra you can do with the software that you have, right? And analytics is going to be an important key item in this new era of companies, because it gives us very important insights. It helps us understand where there are weaknesses in the processes. Like there's a concept called as process mining. You guys can check it out. We'll leave the floor open for like 5 minutes. If anybody's got any questions, either unmute or put it in the chat over here. Kashish and I will be happy to answer. I actually got one question. What is the guidance note called, sir, where you referred earlier? That's the the guidance note on implementing internal financial controls. You can find it from the ICAI website, and you can download it over there. It's about 283 pages. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to ask. We are here to learn. We are here to advance ourselves, take us to the next level. Right? And the questions can be posted publicly. It's all good. There's no judgments going to be made. What type of software you think is deficient or CAs wanted but can't find one for certain work, which can support to ensure audit is more qualitative? Are you talking about a tool which can be used by CAs for executing audits? Is that your question? Okay. As of now, like there could be some audit softwares available in the market. I'm not aware, which can be used by chartered accountants in practice. But nevertheless, one can use software such like Alfresco or SharePoint or Asana, for that example. You get all these softwares and customize it and tweak it to the flows that you need, where you can set benchmarks. In fact, I would rather recommend Alfresco as a good workflow management software, and you can configure your workflows in such a way that your audit quality benchmarks can be met. It's a free software for download, and it can be installed in anybody's office. Alfresco. I'll just type it over here in case anybody needs. Anybody else got any questions? Kashish, do you have any questions?
Yeah, no, sir, as such, for now, no, but I am always looking forward to actually, whenever I test, for example, it is just an experience that I'm sharing. So, for example, I was working on a pharmaceutical company, so it was actually very difficult to check the reconciling items where I was taking data from the pharmaceutical, which actually they maintain, and then they maintain tally as well. And then they have some reconciling items, which is actually very difficult to keep a track of. And then they have their own logic for that. So this logistics actually becomes extremely difficult at times. And when this conference thing came up, so actually I was doing that client only, and I was like, let's give it a shot. Why not get into IT and
talk about IT? Yes, IT is important, and I think I kind of quite understand, because when tally is involved, there's going to be some human element involved. How do you know whether he's entering the data properly from the report or not? That would be your first question. Why is it not integrated? Can you trust the GITCs of tally? That is another question altogether. And these sorts of practical situations lead you to think, can I actually trust the system, or should I trust the person? Can I trust the data? Or is there any other magical way or new audit procedure I can create to get comfort on the data?
Yes, and as such, for these clients, it is also very difficult to involve the IT controls.
Yeah.
Because they don't have IT controls in place. Many a times clients don't have IT controls in place. They don't even know that if something is automated, it has to be manually reconciled. So then that also becomes a problem.
Exactly. So yes, so that brings us to 2 points over here. We have to educate ourselves in terms of how we are supposed to audit, and more importantly, we as auditors can also give guidance to our clients in telling
Yes,
them, boss, okay, you got something good over here. Why not take it to the next step? Enhance it. Why don't you introduce an automated control to reconcile the data between the systems, right? So that is also another responsibility as CAs, because in the auditing, the objective of the audit is not to find mistakes, but to give an opportunity for the client to rectify the mistakes, right? That's why the statement says, the financial statements are free, are true and fair and free from material misstatements.
Yes.
Material misstatements, we can also identify, they can identify, but it's our duty to give them an opportunity to rectify.
Yes.
Right. Perfect, Kashish. Thank you so much. Great job. Can we move on to the next presenter?
Thank you, Ms. Kashish and Bharat sir. We will now move on to the next speaker. The second topic for the session. I request the second speaker of the session, Mr. Shimon John Joshua, to take over.
Hi, hi Shimon, nice to meet you.
Hi, sir.
So just before you speak, I wanted to set the context over here. Work from home tools and techniques for audit one must possess, right? Yes, because of the pandemic, the whole world has learned that we need not go to offices and work. How is that going to impact the chartered accountants? How we can do the audit, how we can conduct our audit procedures or routine work from home, right? It is like I mentioned in my initial context setting for Kashish. It is very important that we adapt, we adopt, and we be agile on what's happening, right? So now Shimon has prepared a wonderful presentation with some tools and with some guidance as to how we can implement. But I would like to also mention one thing. It does not end with this presentation. Innovation distinguishes between leadership and a follower, and that's a brilliant statement which Shimon has put in his presentation here by Steve Jobs, right? Just because we are chartered accountants or future chartered accountants doesn't mean that we cannot innovate anymore. So even if you guys have got wonderful ideas as to how you can automate routine tasks, by all means, share it to the world. Don't keep it to yourself. If you share the knowledge, you become richer by getting more and more friends and more people who believe and trust in you, right? So keeping this background in mind, Shimon, I wish you all the best. Over to you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Good evening, respected dignitaries and my fellow colleagues. It's a great opportunity for me to present a paper for the National Conference of ICI. And the topic which I've selected for this conference would be work from home tools and techniques for audit one must possess. Now, as we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has completely changed the perspective with which we are doing our work, it's very important for CA firms also to adopt to these changes. Now, as Bharat sir rightly said, innovation is not only the important thing, it's about how we adapt to this innovation. And that is exactly how innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. Now, before I start with my presentation, I would like to go through some of the challenges which we as auditors or as articles face when it comes to working from home. Now, as we know that for an auditor, the most important area would be data, be it client-related data or be it any other data. For an auditor, the most important aspect is data. Now, since we're working from home and not in our office premises, it becomes very difficult for us to get this data. Now, pre-COVID-19, it would be very easy for us to go and have a visit to the client's place and get the data relevant for us. But in the COVID situation, this is not very easy. So this is one major challenge which everyone has to overcome. Now, coming to the second important challenge which COVID-19 has put us into is work management. Now, earlier when we were working in our office premises, it was very easy for us to have a talk with our principal or have a talk with our senior audit lead and get our doubts cleared, or it was very easy for the CA firms to get the work done within the due dates or within the time assigned. But now, since everyone is working from home, I think this is a major challenge which we need to overcome. Now, communication. Coming to communication. communication with the client is a very important area for an auditor. And now, since we are working from home, how do we do this communication effectively and efficiently? This is very important. Not only communication with the client, but also communication with the articles, with your senior staff, or with the principal. How do we as students or we as auditors get this communication done effectively? Now, coming to the most important challenge, documentation. As we know that auditing involves a lot of working papers as well as a lot of documents which we receive from the client. Now, when we are working in our office premises, it was very easy for us to document these files and everything properly. But now, COVID-19 has put us again into a very important challenge. How do we document these working papers or the other relevant data of the client? Now, collaboration. Now, collaboration is a concept which is important in every kind of work, not only when it comes to auditing, but in every area of professional work, collaboration is very important. Now, let me tell you, say, for example, if I'm auditing a company and my principal have assigned a team which includes 5 members. So before we start this audit, there will be planning on how to prepare the audit program, what all areas has to be done, what all areas has to be checked, what will be the key aspects which we need to be covering in this audit. So all this is a part of collaboration. And when we were working on premises, collaboration was very easy because we could see everyone face to face. But when it comes to working from home, collaboration is a major challenge which we need to overcome. So my overview, the overview of this presentation will be, what are the various softwares or tools which we can use to get access to the data? What are the various tools through which we can communicate with our clients or with our principal or our audit staff? What are the softwares available for work management? Then how can we efficiently do the team collaboration? And last, it's very important now, since we are all working from home, data confidentiality and security is a major challenge, and that will also be looked upon in this presentation. Now, starting with data accessibility and storage. Now, here I'm introducing a very common concept which I hope everyone knows, cloud computing. Now, in most of the small and medium-sized CA firms, almost all the data will be kept in a physical server, which we can access only when we are working on premises. Now, while working from home, it becomes very important for us to get access to this data, which are kept in the physical servers in our office premises or maybe at our principal's place. Now, what is the change, or what is the change which we can bring in to shift from the traditional method to a more easier and a more convenient method of getting access to the data? And I'm telling you, cloud computing is a major tool through which we can get access to the data through internet. All that we need is a good internet connection, and we can get access to the relevant data that we need. Now, what is cloud computing? Now, a very simple definition for cloud computing is, cloud computing stores and manages data on virtual or remote servers, which can be easily accessed from anywhere via the internet. Now, if we are adopting the cloud computing, there are various tools which we have for the cloud storage. A very common example is Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, Amazon Web Services. Now, Dropbox, I'm very familiar with Dropbox since in my office, the cloud storage tool which we are using is Dropbox. And I can say it's very easy for me when I'm working from home to get access to all the relevant data. Now, if I want to store any workings or prepare any document, it can all easily be done through Dropbox or such cloud storage tools. So these are few of the major cloud storage tools which we are actually very familiar with: Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, Amazon Web Services. Now, it's very important for us to understand why we need to move into cloud storage. Now, the one major advantage of cloud storage is accessibility. Now, as I mentioned earlier, instead of keeping all the data in a physical server, if we are moving into the cloud storage, getting access to the data is very easy. All that we need is the internet connection. Now, it's very cost efficient also. Why? Because a physical server will require a lot of hardware and software maintenance cost. Whereas coming to the cloud storage, they have a very important feature called as pay as you use policy, which means if you're using a certain amount of data or a data storage capacity, then you need to pay only for that. So that becomes a very important advantage when it comes to shifting to the cloud storage tool. Now, the third advantage of a cloud storage tool is convenient sharing of files. Now, as I already mentioned, if I'm working from my home and my principal needs some important work done by me and he needs a file immediately, I just need to open my laptop, log into the cloud storage tool and just upload, and the principal will be getting that file in no time. Now, cloud storage tools have a very good feature, which I'll be discussing in this presentation, which is known as collaboration. Now, multiple users can work on the cloud storage tool and can easily collaborate using a cloud storage tool. Now, security, as we know that cloud storage service providers make sure that our data is completely protected and secure, and there is no issue regarding any security regarding the data, regarding your relevant data. Now, a major advantage of cloud storage is scalability. Now, when it comes to data storage, different firms will have different storage requirements. And a very important feature of the cloud storage tool is that you can increase your storage capacity depending upon your requirements by paying the required amount. And hence, it's a very easy method of increasing your storage space. And these are the 5 or 6 major advantages of using cloud storage. Now, another important aspect is a remote desktop software. What is the remote desktop software? Now, remote desktop software allows you to interact or connect to a computer which is in a remote location using the internet. Again, this is very important. And AnyDesk and TeamViewer are few of the very commonly used remote desktop softwares. Now, why do we need a remote desktop software? Now, say, for example, if I'm working from my home and I have a doubt regarding a particular application or a software which I don't know to use, and I don't have my principal or my audit manager near to me, and how do I get this doubt solved, or how do I get the problem rectified? Remote desktop software helps us in doing this. My principal can get a connection from his place to my system and he can solve my doubt clearly. Now, this is a screenshot of AnyDesk software. Now, here, as you see, if my principal wants to access my system, I just need to provide him with this code and he can easily get access to my system and do the relevant workings needed. Now, similarly, if I need to get access to any of my clients or client system, all I need to do is that enter the code provided by the client in this field, and I can easily get access to the data. So remote desktop software helps us in getting an easy access to a system which is in a remote location only with the help of internet. Of course, there are security issues which we need to consider while using these remote desktop softwares, since most of the remote desktop softwares are not paid softwares. Now, coming to Google Forms. Now here I would like to share a separate screen explaining you the relevance of Google Forms and how beautiful Google Forms helps us in getting data. So I'll be sharing a screen. Yeah. Let's say, for example, regarding a particular audit or regarding income tax return filing purpose, I need few data from my client. Now, since the client is in a different place, since all the clients are in different places, and I need to get access to the data, how do I get this easily? Here, if you see, these are the major questions which I have. Maybe the PAN number of the client, Aadhaar number, the client's name, the client's email ID, address, phone number, etc. All I need to do is that send this Google form to all the clients from whom you want the data. And as and when the client fills in the data, it gets automatically updated here. And finally, what I can do is get all this data into an Excel sheet, and this makes our work very easier. So this is a very good feature which Google Forms have. They have an integration with Microsoft Excel. And see, now this is a demo question which I have prepared. And see, if you can see, Google Forms helps us in getting this data very easily into an Excel sheet. And that is a very important feature of Google Forms, which many of us should be knowing. Now, coming back, the next important area which we'll be covering here is communication. Now, as I already mentioned, we are all working from our homes, and it's very difficult for us to get this communication done effectively. Now, in a work from home scenario, a team member does not get a chance to glance across the room or a cabin to see whether his teammate or senior has a minute to spare for a quick chat. But this brings in the need for a communication tool. Now, what are the tips for effective remote communication? Now, as we already said, we have to be prepared to adapt quickly. Now, working from home is a completely different scenario. You may not be used to it, and you will be forced to get into this culture, and hence we need to be prepared to adapt quickly. Now, for any audit work to be done effectively and efficiently and on time, it's a very important that the principal as well as the team members get into a quick chat and ensure regular team check-ins to get what is the update regarding work assigned. Again, invest in collaborative software. Now, there are various softwares which will be coming through this presentation, which helps us in collaborating very effectively. So in order to have a effective remote communication, we need to invest in collaborative software. Now, when it comes to a new audit assignment or a completely different audit area, which I'm being assigned by my principal, I would be very curious to know how this audit is to be conducted. What are the areas which I will have to check on this audit? And hence, the principal can have a video conferencing or any other medium through which he can tell me how this auditing is very important. And that is where visual communication is a very important tip for effective remote communication. And the last one is prepare concepts and ideas visually. Now, a few of the communication tools or a few of the, I can't say these are only communication tools, these are communication as well as collaborative tools. For one example is Microsoft Teams. Slack is another very important communication tool. Zoom is also another very important communication tool through which we are doing this national conference now. And Cisco WebEx is also another very important communication tool. Now, a few of the features, so let's make a short comparison between MS Teams or Slack versus Zoom or Google Meet. What are the features available in these conferencing tools? Now, coming to screen sharing, yes, it's possible in MS Teams as well as Slack or in Zoom or Google Meet. Meeting notes can be shared in all these softwares, yes. Voice or video calling features are available in all these softwares. File sharing is only possible in MS Teams or Slack, whereas in Zoom or Google Meeting, file sharing is not possible. As well as focus sharing. Now, what do you mean by focus sharing? Now, if a particular audit team is being assigned, which consists of only 5 members, and if the principal wants immediate discussion with only this team, he can create a separate channel in MS Teams or Slack and have a conversation with them. Whereas focus sharing is not possible in Zoom or Google Meet. Now, this is a screenshot of MS Teams. Now, if you see here, there's a chat facility available. We can make a call, we can share the files. Now, this is a screenshot of a work being assigned to me, and my principal has a team, he can create different teams, he can have a call with me, he can share the required files. So MS Teams, I cannot say that it's only a communication tool, but it's a very important collaborative communication tool, which everyone should be aware of. Coming to office management. Now, as we know that today, we'll be working in our homes and our principals or our auditors will not be able to contact us. They will not be able to have a face-to-face interaction with us. And that brings in the need for a very important area, which is known as office management softwares. Now, office management softwares should have certain important features inbuilt in them. One is it should be easy and user-friendly design. That means if I'm using this office management software, I should be able to clearly understand what are my tasks, when I should be able to do it, what is the due date of completing this task, and I should be able to communicate this effectively through the office management software. So easy and user-friendly office management software is very important when it comes to remote working. Now, coming to task and deadline management. Now, most of the office management softwares have integration with applications of softwares like Clockify, which helps us in letting us, which helps in knowing, which helps in conveying the articles. What is the due date within which they have to complete a task, when they should be submitting their work, and therefore an office management software should have these basic inbuilt features. Now, an office management software should be compatible with mobile. Now, since we are working from our homes, we may not always have access to our laptops. And maybe a principal might have a call with us and he will be asking us to give an update on a task assigned. And you should be able to log into your office management software and give him an update regarding this. So almost all the office management software should be compatible with mobile. Robust access control is a very important feature which an office management software should have. Now, since the principal will be assigning different works, he will be sharing certain files to the office management software. The principal should be aware to whom these files or these tasks should be assigned. Now, since these are very confidential data which is being shared through the office management software, it should have a feature in it which restricts the accessibility of these files being shared. A few of the very common office management softwares are Papilio, which is actually separately designed for practicing professionals. Asana, again, is a very useful office management software, which is also being used in my office. ClickUp is also another very important office management software. Now, I'll be giving a glimpse of how Asana works. Now, if you see, this is the Asana office management software. And if you see here, these are the words which my principal has assigned to me. Now, I've taken one audit working which has been assigned to me, which is regarding a statutory audit. Now here, the principal has assigned various subtasks to me, which is opening trial balance verification, inventory verification, cash balance verification. Now, if you see, this is how an office management software works. The principal can easily assign the work, and I'll be knowing what all I will have to do in this particular assignment, who all are the collaborators. Now, for this particular audit work, my principal has assigned 3 collaborators. So this is how an office management software works. And it becomes very easy for me. Now see, here, once I've completed this opening trial balance verification, I can give an update regarding this in this field. And I can inform my principal that I've completed this particular task, and he can also get an important update regarding this in no time. So office management software becomes very important in this remote auditing situations when it comes to completing tasks within the due dates assigned. Now again, Papilio is a very important office management software which is specifically designed for the practicing professionals like chartered accountants, company secretaries, which have very important features available in it. For example, managing the processes, managing the resources, you can easily share files, you can easily collaborate with your teammates using the Papilio software, and this is a very important software which everyone should be knowing about. Now, this is a very important area. How do we collaborate when we're working from home? Team collaboration is a very important tool for any successful audit to happen. Now, as we know, auditing involves checking the data of the client, getting updates from the client, and we as auditors will always have to be curious about something, if something is going on in that particular company, or if something wrong is going on in that particular company. So we need to be sharing the data, we need to be sharing our ideas on how to conduct this audit successfully, and that is where team collaboration becomes very important. Now, through team collaboration, we can easily share the files required. Team collaboration helps or team collaboration promotes problem solving. If I have a doubt regarding a particular task assigned to me, using a team collaboration software, I can easily connect to my senior or my principal and get this doubt cleared in a very short span of time. Now, as I already said, auditing is a very interesting area where lots of things have to be checked, where new areas have to be dived into, and innovation is a very important area. And having a very good team collaboration software helps in innovation also, as well as boosting learning and skill sharing. Now, through team collaboration software, the principal can conduct various classes for his audit staff, and having good team collaboration software helps in boosting the skills of the articles as well as. Now, which are the very commonly used collaboration tools? Google Suite, Soho Click, Microsoft Teams, Flow. These are the very commonly used collaboration tools through which files can be shared effectively, through which communication can take place effectively. And these are tools which helps us in collaborating with our team very quickly. Now, this is a screenshot of MS Office integration with Google Sheets. Now, Google Sheets have a very good feature, which is integration with MS Office. Now, say for example, this is a particular sheet which my principal has created regarding the monthly filing of GST returns. Now, all that I need to do is, as and when I complete the return filing of any particular client, I just need to update the status here, and my principal will automatically get the update regarding as to what the status about the return filing is. So this is a very important integration which everyone should be aware of. You just need to create a Google Sheet and share it with your teammates, and they just need to update what is the status regarding a particular work assigned, and everyone involved in that particular work can get to know about what is the status of the work very quickly. Now, coming to Dropbox. Now, Dropbox, as I already mentioned, Dropbox is a software that's being used in my office, and I can tell you very clearly how work happens smoothly through Dropbox. For this, again, I'm sharing my screen. Now, this is how Dropbox looks like, and see here, my principal has created a separate folder for me, and this is a folder regarding tedious workings. Now, let me take you one important workings. Now, this is a working which I've prepared. Oh, sorry for that. Yes. Now, this is the working which I've prepared for a particular client. Now, through Dropbox, Dropbox has a very good feature of integration with MS Excel. Now, once I share this file with my principal, and he needs to check my workings, all that he needs to do is open this file in Dropbox itself, and he just need to go through it, and he just need to find out if there is any error or anything else which needs to be edited, and he can do it there itself, and the file gets automatically saved. This speeds up the entire process actually. And the auditor can also mark any of his comments regarding the workings which I've prepared here. So this is a very good important integration software which we need to be aware of. Coming to the last, the most important area is data confidentiality and security. As we know that we are all working from our homes, and we'll be getting data from our client, which we'll be storing in our personal laptops and our personal devices. And what is the security regarding this data? Or what are the important tips which we need to keep, or which we need to remember regarding data confidentiality and security? Now, if you want to assign, or if you want to share a file to your teammates, most of the cloud storage tools have a feature where they can restrict access to only the files to which team members need to have access for completing the assigned task. So cloud storage has this very important feature through which they can restrict access to only the team members who need access to the relevant data. Now, while working in a cloud-based environment, there are features available to have restrictions on sharing, copying, printing, etc. of files. Now, the digital document should be stored in the task-specific folder, and the firm should have a policy of not allowing storing of confidential documents on personal laptops of team members. No recording of client calls, no screen recording, no clicking pictures, and video capturing should be allowed unless expressly consented to by the client. Now, before concluding my presentation, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Bharat sir also, who has guided me for this conference. And also, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Mangalore branch of ICI, who has given me an opportunity to present a short presentation on the topic work from home tools and techniques an auditor or the audit staff must possess while doing working from home audit. But before concluding, I would also like to add few important tips or which students need to be aware of. Now, past few months, even I'm working from home, and there are certain important things which we need to be aware of. One is the power of Excel. MS Excel is such a very important tool which most of us are not so much aware of, or most of us are not so much knowledgeable about. So when you're working from home, let's spend some time to get to know or study MS Excel, because it is a very important tool when it comes to auditing. Now, second and the most important tip is keep yourselves updated. Now, when I was working from home during lockdown, I had enrolled for many courses regarding financial modeling, etc. So we as articles or students always need to keep ourselves updated. Even though we are not working in an office environment, the job still remains the same, and we always need to keep ourselves updated. With this, I'm concluding my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shimon. It's a great presentation. In fact, these both topics, if you look at it, right, like one is auditing in the digital era, and secondly, how we can embrace work from home, right? Like, auditing in the digital era would probably apply to large chartered accountant firms having, a lot of, a huge clientele with, e-commerce and technology, right? And work from home is equally applicable to everyone, like be it a large CA firm or a small CA firm, right? And these tools are definitely very much useful for us. And it's better that we understand how to work from home at this stage in your articleship, because we'll never know how the working culture is going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. And if that's going to be a barrier for us, okay, there's a different style of working that's come up, like God knows, like, people are innovative, anything can happen. I don't want it to be something that comes in your way from achieving your professional excellence, right? It's better, like I said in my previous thing, it's better to be agile right now. And you guys are students, right? You guys understand technology better than anyone over here, right? I myself, I embrace technology, but if you ask me, the detailed questions on Instagram and all that stuff, like how certain functionalities work, I have no clue. I've never posted a story in my life, right? So you guys can understand these technologies better. And most importantly, you guys have a skill that, probably your the senior members in the profession or your seniors in general does not have. That is the art of Googling. If anything goes wrong, we have definitely make an attempt to think about it. But if that doesn't work, we just take out a phone and Google, right? And like I said earlier, this is not the end of all the tools available from work from home. You can find out so many other tools. In fact, I would insist everyone to visit this site. It's called installatron.com, right? Installatron.com basically is like in your EIS subject, you have something called as Web 2.0, Web 3.0, right? So yeah, Installatron basically contains all these web-based applications which you can download and install on your computers or on your web servers, right? There is an open source ERP available. There is an open source document management system available, right? If Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint is too expensive, then download the open source version, install it from your server, and you can you can use it. I'll type out the spelling, Giri, in a bit. All right. If you want to keep a track of your billing, there's a billing software, ticketing software, HRMS application, your sales and leads, your CRM application. Everything is there, right? So this is just a lead that I'm giving you. Similar to Installatron, there's another company called Softaculous. I can figure out I'll give you guys a spelling in a bit, right? So like these are some of the leads which I came across when I was trying to set up automation and things like that for my father's practice, right? But more importantly, what it means to be working from home, there is something else that I really wish to talk about to all the students and everybody present over here. One thing is we are being impeded by not going to the office or not visiting to our clients' places. As a result, we have hardship in terms of communication, coordination, documentation, and everything that we normally do. And now we are working from home, so we have that barrier. So I would like to seriously emphasize two things. One is you guys need to ensure the health of the team is good. Your personal well-being should not be affected by you guys working from home, because I'm sorry to say, but the underlying assumption done by many people in India and all over the world is if you're working from home, you're always available to get on a call or to get, or to do some last minute work and things like that. So your personal well-being, your focus should not be undeterred. So as students or as team leads, or you can always make up some practices as to how you can give your best to the firm, and also maintain your personal well-being. And your personal well-being also includes your CA studies, which is really, really important. And I don't want anyone to, lose track of that, right? Number two, also what needs to be focused on is the health of the engagement. Whatever engagement you're doing, like if you were doing it without work from home, things were pretty much simple. But because of the work from home thing, different clients react differently. And as a result, some engagements, some of your audits may work faster, some of your audits or work may end up being slower. So it's your job as CA students, because you guys are operating these engagements. You guys are at the ground level and you know exactly what is going on, right? It's very important that you keep yourself appraised, your team members appraised, and your seniors also appraised in terms of the health of the engagement. Health of your personal team members and persons, and health of the engagement. These are the two mega things that I want everyone to keep in mind. Point number two is how you can automate, how to secure your data, and how to achieve effective communication and collaboration. This has been brilliantly brought out by Shimon. And one word of advice, a legal advice actually for everyone. If anyone is using TeamViewer or AnyDesk to access another person's computer, you are actually inviting a legal risk of, you're basically operating his computer. So be very careful with what data you take, what data you see, what all applications you open, because if something goes wrong, it'll be very difficult for you guys to come out of that situation. So be extremely careful. Make it a point that if you're doing a screen sharing session, you make sure that the person is in front of the laptop and that dude has not gone somewhere else, and the laptop is in your position, right? Number two is use genuine softwares like TeamViewer, AnyDesk, and so many other applications. You can also find cracked versions of it, right? If you're using any sort of applications in your office, be it Microsoft Office, be it TeamViewer or Tally or Asana or whatever, try to get the licensed version, because in a cracked version, it is basically a software modified by people that will, bypass the license validation protocols present in the software, right? What if that person has embedded some sort of a backdoor or a spyware or something of that sort? And probably your antivirus will always keep on giving you alerts, but you'll tell no, you'll mark it as an exception because you need the software. There is a risk that your client data could be accessed by other people. Regardless of the size of the client or the importance of the client, your client could be a shopkeeper or your client could be a e-commerce billionaire, right? You have to treat you have to protect every client's data equally, right? And protect yourself from any other legal repercussions, right? And understand these risks as well. And more importantly, the final message that I would want to give to all you students is that, like I said, you guys understand technology, you guys know how to Google. Why don't you guys engage in such meaningful conversations with your principals as well, right? When you're having these conversations with your principal, your boss understands that, okay, you're paying an interest in the practice and you want to do something better out of it. He or she may also appreciate it and may also encourage you to do it. And as a result, your work will be more efficient. You can finish your work quickly and focus on your studies, or do something, take other initiatives that's going to enhance your knowledge and understanding, right? And the trust also gets maintained. So it also becomes your responsibility to talk to your seniors, tell them about, okay, how we can make things better, how we can ensure that the health of the team members is good, health of the engagements are also good. Why don't we introduce so and so automation? And a lot of CAs will be welcoming. All right. So Shimon, excellent presentation. I really like the fact that you guys you went and showcased a live demo to everyone, and I hope everyone can also appreciate it. We'll just wait for a few minutes, and if anybody's got any questions, please either unmute yourself and speak, or put it on the chat over here, and Shimon and I will be happy to answer. Okay, Shimon, I've got one question for you.
Okay.
What sort of initiatives have you suggested or initiated in your office? You know, need not go too much in detail, but you have seriously, you have spent some time in researching and, putting up this wonderful presentation. So as of now, what all newer suggestions you may want to give to your principal or to the friends of your fraternity in your hometown for their principals?
So can you just come again? Like the question was not clear.
Okay. Now that you have done a research on these applications and tools to enable efficient work from home practices, what sort of recommendations would you give to your principal or your CA friends are there and you definitely will talk with each other how each offices work? Like what would you give at a high level? What
Well,
sort of
since actually for the past 1 year, a few months we were working from our office and a few months we were working from home. Few of the challenges which I had to face is communication, definitely. And I think every CA firm needs to spend at least or needs to allot at least 1 day in a week to get the team connected. That is a practice which I think every CA firm needs to adapt or adopt actually, because yes, we are working for a firm, but team collaboration is very important, and that is something which I feel every CA firm needs to check in, or every CA firm needs to look into, because 1 day in a week where they can get everyone together, get them connected. It can be an informal communication or a formal communication. You can conduct classes on various important amendments happening or various important areas which are developing, and that actually helps students to learn more. In fact, clearing exams is not the final thing. That's what I feel, because you need to keep yourselves updated. You need to know what's happening around you, and that will only make you a successful chartered accountant. So I believe that in every CA firm, be it a small firm or a medium-sized firm, or this should happen actually. The team should get connected. They should be talking about the relevant important information happening around them, because then only we'll feel that we are into this profession. Because studying only from the book will not make us a successful chartered accountant. We need to know what's happening around us, and that can easily happen if such kind of collaboration happens in every CA firm.
Wonderful, Shimon. In fact, I kind of appreciate this input because, like, you're right. Work from home means a lot of effort in communication and coordination, and our time and efforts are being used with our interactions with our clients. You're right. It's very important to also internally catch up, reflect, discuss, enhance, and achieve together. So, I think it's a very valid suggestion where everybody, needs to huddle up, as a weekly huddle. Or maybe like a 1 or 2 hour session where somebody gives the update, somebody talks about the amendments, somebody talks about who's going to do what engagement for the next 2 weeks or next 1 month, so on and so forth. I think that's a pretty wonderful thing. And like you said, like we have got softwares like Teams, WhatsApp, video calling, or whatever it is, where anybody can just join in using their smartphones and they need not have their computers to present. I think it's a wonderful suggestion. Shimon, congratulations. I just wanted to hear your thoughts and views. Wish you all the best. I also would like to extend my thanks to the Board of Studies of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and the Mangalore branch of SIRC of ICAI and SICASA, the wing of the Mangalore branch, for inviting me. Kudos to organizing this wonderful event. I'm pretty sure all the students in India, in Mangalore, and world, and all over the nationwide students who are participating, they will reap a lot of benefits by virtue of the speakers and the presenters in this session. I wish you and your team the very best, and let's keep on learning and let's be smart future chartered accountants. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Mr. Shimon John and Bharat sir. As we are at the end of the session, I would like to thank the speakers, Ms. Kashish Advani, for explaining the various aspects in IT audit and steps involved in it, and also for adding a practical touch to it. I would also like to thank the second speaker of the session, Shimon John, for providing clarity on the tools that could be used for audits at work from home, such as the remote desktop softwares, cloud storage, office management softwares, and many more. I also like to thank and express my gratitude to the chairman of the session, CA Bharat Rao, for providing further information on the topics of IT audit and work from home, and also specifying the softwares that could be used for the ease of working. I'm sure the participants are truly benefited and will implement the same information and learning from the session at their workplace. With this, we come to the end of day 1 of Anarghya. I, Nerissa Norona, along with my co-host, Mr. Keith Mendonça, are signing off for the day. We hope to see you all tomorrow with the same spirit and enthusiasm. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.